Around 90 AI-powered cameras are watching the city of Yakima right now. They don't just track vehicles and license plates. They also identify clothing, movement patterns, and other non-facial identifiers tied to people.
And so what the live video cameras allow us to do is search specifically for items of clothing, colors, shapes. Maybe you could say camo and it would search for camo.
With that data stored, searched, and shared with over 100 law enforcement agencies across Washington state. Now, police departments are expanding that system even further with real-time crime centers. That's technology that can follow individuals across the city as events unfold. Supporters say it's about public safety.
Did you previously work for Flock?
I did.
Okay.
So I can see how someone could say that would be a conflict of interest potentially for me because I previously worked there. But to be honest with you, when I first did the looking at all the different license plate readers that were out there, we chose Flock for a reason.
Is there anything that would make you reconsider or scale back this technology in the future?
I don't believe so. I think that we need to keep expanding and looking for new types of technology that can help us do our job.
Critics say it's mass surveillance and an infringement on our rights. Today, I sit down with Yakima County Sheriff Bob Udell, Yakima Police Chief Shawn Boyle, and Union Gap Police Chief Dustin Soptich to ask where that line is drawn and who decides. Only here on Sky Shutter.
All right. Well, I want to thank you guys for coming out here and meeting with me today and talking about the Flock cameras. I just want to get each of your names and a little bit of your background and kind of go from there. So.
All right. Good morning. I'm Bob Udell. I'm the sheriff of Yakima County. I've been sheriff for a little over 7 years now. In a couple of months, I'll be in law enforcement for 36 years. That's a long run, and I've done pretty much everything in law enforcement, public safety in this county. This is a great opportunity to talk to you. Thank you for inviting us to talk literally about one of the best things that's happened to local law enforcement in a long time.
Shawn Boyle, the Yakima Police Department. I've been in the city for coming up on 30 years in April, 28 and a half commissioned. Took the interim chief of police in July of 24, I think, and then the permanent position coming up on a year. February will be a year as the permanent chief of the city of Yakima. My entire commission career has been at the city of Yakima. And again, thanks for the opportunity to try to get some more information out to the public on the Flock system and how it's used, and you know what we're using it for, and hopefully and better educate the community on it.
All right, my name is Dustin Soptich. I'm the chief of police for the city of Union Gap. I've been with Union Gap for about 3 months now, and prior to that, I was with SELA Police Department as the chief over there. And prior to that, I was with the Yakima Police Department for 10 years. I've been in law enforcement for 12 plus years now. And prior to that, I was a dispatcher for 10 years. And so I've been in the public service realm for a while. And just like my partners over here, I'm excited to talk about something that we're passionate about, something that's extremely helped us in the way we do investigations and how well we keep the public safe. And so I think that we're excited to be here and answer any questions that you have about it.
Perfect. All right. Speaking of public safety, what problems are these systems intended to solve here in Yakima?
The Flock system for the city of Yakima, it's basically solved any and all crime that we've been investigating, from down to thefts, a shoplift that the officer has a vehicle identified, all the way up to homicides. It's been instrumental in solving multiple homicides, to include our last one that we had. I think it was the 23rd of December. We had a vague description of a vehicle. They readily utilized the Flock camera systems in the area, identify a vehicle, and develop probable cause, and arrest a juvenile for murder. And we have pages of success stories, but I think it's been instrumental in our DUI enforcement. We enter people with warrants for DUI, and as we know, many of those people reoffend often. The domestic violence is one of our priorities for the agency, and we enter people that have warrants for domestic violence, or if someone's involved in a domestic violence and they flee the scene in a car. Boy, we're good about quickly putting it in and apprehending that person so that they don't have the opportunity to re-victimize the person that they're fleeing from. So I think that's been our auto thefts, we did the numbers. We almost cut our auto thefts in half from before we had flock system, because the officers are able to converge on an area, locate the car. Twofold: one, we hold the person accountable, and then we recover the car for the person who had it stolen and give them their property back.
Yeah, I think as a whole, the intent is that we can hopefully make the community safer by having information that leads us to a lead in the investigation. And like Chief Boyle said, that could be any type of crime at the moment. And the great thing about flock or license plate readers as a whole is that it provides us with information that we wouldn't potentially normally have, because not every witness gets the vehicle exactly right. And so if we're investigating something that what actually occurred a couple of weeks ago or even a few days ago, we can go back and use the case number to look up a particular suspect vehicle, a description of a vehicle, and we can identify what that looks like. And then we can use that as a lead, as a pointer tool to have our detectives go follow up on it, or our officers go follow up on it. And then we can identify who that person might have been and do the investigation, which really comes down to interviewing techniques and identifying other pieces of evidence that we can use in court. And so really what flock or any type of license plate reader or camera does is provides us just a tool to point us in the right direction, which we wouldn't normally have if we didn't have a really good witness standing on the corner of a roadway and point us there.
Great. Now this might sound kind of silly, but I'm just let's start at the basics. What exactly is a flock safety camera?
So the flock is just a company. There's lots of different license plate reader companies out there, but what a flock safety camera is it's really just called an automatic license plate reader is what it is. And what it does is it's a stationary camera that is put up on the public right of way, and it faces the roadway, which there's no expectation of privacy on the roadway, according to several different case laws out there. And it takes images as vehicles are driving by and helps us produce an image that can be later on utilized to identify what the car is, and then we can, if the picture quality is good enough, we can see a license plate on there, and then we can use the other tools we have access to in our law enforcement jobs that can provide us the owner of the vehicle, like the Department of Licensing. And that, just like I said, gives us a tool to use towards pointing us in the right direction. So really all it is a camera that takes pictures and then uploads them to the Amazon Web Services government cloud and provides them to us for a 30-day period. And then after that, they're deleted and we don't have access to them anymore.
We've been using license plate readers, 25 years. They've been mounted on our patrol cars. But flock type systems expand radically what we can see. Instead of just only what the police car sees, the flock camera helps out with that. This is a huge county, and there's not many patrol cars rolling around. And that's why these cameras can be such huge assets for us.
And I think quickly to expand a little bit off of what the sheriff said, and it's not necessarily about the camera system. We've had them at the police department for probably over 20 years with the vehicle mounted, et cetera. But as the sheriff said, this is a huge county, and unfortunately our criminals, they move freely about the valley. They move freely about the state, but a lot of what's going on in the lower valley impacts what happens up in the city of Yakima, the city of Union Gap, the unincorporated Yakima County. And this allows us to share information between all of our agencies. And as the sheriff said, this entire county is understaffed with law enforcement. This is just one more piece of technology that expands our ability to work to identify people, because all of us are working shorthanded in this valley, and without the use of technology, we just not enough police officers to effectively police our city or the entire county.
Okay, great. I'm kind of curious, who actually owns the cameras? I know at the study session a few weeks ago, you mentioned it's kind of like a rentals type service.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the cameras, we don't own the cameras. They're a subscription-based company, Flock Safety is. And so we lease the cameras from them. And that way, what that does for us is it helps us with maintenance. We can't manage all of that technology that's out there. And so the company is responsible for making sure the cameras are operational. As long as we're paying our bill, then they make sure that their end of the contract is lived to. So they make sure that they're working, that the batteries are good, that the solar panels are working appropriately. So we don't own the cameras, the company does.
Each agency has their own contract that a certain amount that they're done. And then we are also using some of the private points too. We're able to have access to a business owner can purchase these started. I mean, their homeowners associations use them. Yeah. Private businesses use them. So.
Okay. And do those interact with your guys' system as well?
They can if they share those images with us. So in the event that a private entity wants to share their access to their images, then they can do so through Flock Safety's web portal, and that allows us to have access to their images. And we can then not only search our cameras, but the cameras that we have shared with us as well.
Okay, great. I'm curious how many Flock cameras are currently deployed in Yakima.
In Yakima County?
I guess let's do Yakima City and County. Let's get a little.
The city has a contract for 87 cameras and 6 portable ones. It's 87 fixed and 6 portable ones.
Okay.
And then we're talking about the school district has some that they're going to give up, and we potentially may take over just a couple from them, which will help. But we'll just expand ours at a small period. But currently, we're paying for 87 and 6 flex cameras, which are portable that can be moved when there's an individual investigation that they need.
I know that in Union Gap we have 15 license plate reader cameras, and I don't know what the exact number is in the entire county. I know that together with all the entities, I would imagine that we have a few hundred probably, but I don't know exactly what the number is.
Yeah, I think it's a bit under 300 of the LPRs and license plate readers throughout the county. That includes all the different cities and unincorporated Yakima. So there's quite a few, but that makes sense because our county's 4,300 square miles.
Right.
Yeah, it's huge. And if we had unlimited funds, we'd have more cameras because there's still lots of places for people to move around. And it's not like we're hiding the cameras.
Oh, yeah, no.
Right? Okay, so you don't think the bad guys know where they are? Absolutely, right? So the more would be better, but what we have has been amazingly effective.
All right, thank you. Currently, what is the total cost to date for the cameras in the city of Yakima?
I believe we budgeted 280 or 285,000. I apologize for not the exact number, and I think our bill last year was 250,000 that we're spending. That has been budgeted over the years. It's not new money. I think in the study session, I think it was a study session, that there was discussion that this was new money that was going to be allocated, and it was actually money that's been budgeted over the years. So, according to our lieutenant, I think we spent 250,000 last year on the cameras. But again, I look back at our records. We had 147 police officers in 2014, and our auto thefts were over double what they are now. So the effectiveness of this technology has been, you talk about whether you hire a police officer, that would pay for about a police officer and a half. And so the effectiveness of having, 87 sets of eyes out there at different intersections throughout the city compared to one more police officer, to me, it's not even a question, because it's allowed us to be able to be effective in using the data or the information collected to respond to the right area and identify people. One of our patrol units, or patrol squad, which is 10 people and a supervisor, arrested over 200 people with the use of a flock camera system last year. And a lot of times that means, domestic violence offender or DUI warrants, somebody DUI warrants or felony warrants could potentially drive by all three of us. We'd have no idea that they're wanted, but yet the flock alert system that that vehicle's entered, that it's related to that person, we're able to stop and identify them, because they're probably passing police officers regularly, but without the additional technology, they're just going to continue on their way. So again, taking them off the streets makes so that the domestic violence victim is no longer, they know that their offender is locked up and they're free to be not harmed by them in the near future, and let the court system deal with the original case.
I think in addition to that too, I think that there's this impression that we're only using them for people who have committed crimes, and that's not actually the case. We're interested in everything public safety, and so there have been many cases where people have gone missing, and or if there's elderly people that have mental health issues, we're using them for that as well, to help locate people and keep them safe. And Now, this is used as a pointer tool, and so just because a car drove by doesn't necessarily mean that person that we are looking for, whether they be missing or a defendant in a case, doesn't mean that they're driving. We still have to confirm the identity of the person that we're contacting and make sure that we are addressing, the right person. And so I think that's a really important note, that it's not just for people that are looking for to arrest. We're using these for missing children, missing adults, people that have some mental health issues or suicidal people, in addition to all the crimes that we're investigating as well.
Okay. You mentioned that the cameras have cut the car thefts down in half. Is that correct?
Yeah, we did the numbers. It was 520 in, say, 2021. Last year, according to the stats I was given for the study session, we had 254 last year. So
So the 500 was which year?
2021.
2021. Okay. All right. Thank you.
And that's just in the city of Yakima.
Right.
Right.
This county has led the state in auto thefts
Oh,
for
yeah.
a decade or two, right? I mean, there's a lot of things Yakima's known for, and it's not just apples and wine. And one of them is this perception that we've got a lot of crime here. Maybe not as much as, I think we get a bad rap, but we do have issues. And the flock system has made a big difference. Now, what's the practical results to everyone who lives here? Because not everyone's going to get their car stolen, right? That's not going to happen. But we all pay, most of us pay car insurance. And I had a guy that I was talking to not too long ago, and he said, he moved here from somewhere else. And he said, yeah, I got here, and my house insurance was more. Then my car insurance was more than I was paying from where I came from. He said, so I called my insurance company and asked them, why am I paying more? And the answer was, well, you're in Yakima. So those car thefts have had a direct impact on the insurance that we all pay. As we cut these things in half, the hope is we'll all pay less. Now that's pretty big. And then it reduces, makes our reputation better. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Can I just add something real quick
Of
too?
course.
I think that it's really easy to say that the flock system has dramatically increased our ability to solve crime. That's true. But it's not without good investigators, good detectives. Again, this is just a pointer tool that we're using, and our people are doing a really good job of investigating cases. And I think that needs to be said. I think that, yes, this is a great tool. We don't want to get rid of it because it has some real value. And when we use it to benefit the community, I think that the community appreciates that. I think the general public appreciates that we have a tool that we can help solve the crime that they were involved in as a victim, and that we can hold people accountable because that's what they expect from us as tax-paying people. And so, but we have really good cops, really good officers, men and women who are doing a really good job and asking the right questions and treating people right. And I think that's a really good point we need to make as well.
If I could just build off that part of that, what Dustin was hitting on is where the enforcement aspect of that. And when we start looking at the county as a whole, we need to invest in the entire criminal justice system. There's the courts, the defense attorneys, the incarceration costs. And when we start looking at the cost of public safety, that's where a lot of the additional costs come from, because you don't have enough prosecutors to prosecute the people. We can arrest everyone. We can use all these tools, but if you don't have the people to prosecute them, the defense attorneys, then they're not held accountable. So I think, and it's a larger discussion now, we're here talking about ALPRs, but we want to keep reiterating that there's a huge cost to public safety, and it's a big number in everybody's budget. But Union Gap, City of Yakima, the unincorporated Yakima County, but yet we're hoping that we can build good cases to hold people accountable and then lower the crime rate across the entire country.
Yeah, part of that is we have to have really good evidence. And unless we have really good evidence, then it's less likely that the prosecutors are going to prosecute a case. And part of that, people expect us to have video now or really good images of people who have committed crimes. And that is one of the reasons why we're investing in technology, because the community expects it. Nearly every person has a doorbell camera or a cell phone camera that they're recording things on. We wear body cameras, or we have cameras in our cars that are recording things. People expect that we're going to have something on video at some point, or a still image that shows some sort of, a vehicle that was involved in a crime, or a person who was involved in a crime. And so Flock provides us the opportunity to put a vehicle in a picture and produce that to the court so that they can use it in their case that they're prosecuting.
Okay, great, thank you. So at the recent study session, I know you mentioned the real-time crime center. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And is that a new thing you guys want to deploy in the city of Yakima? Or I think that was countywide, right?
Yeah, so this is a countywide effort that we, I want to say that all of the chiefs right now, all the law enforcement executives in the entire county are extremely collaborative on working towards this common goal of supporting each other and solving crime. We know that Chief Boyle mentioned earlier that crime is, moves about the county. And it's not just our county, it moves up to Kittitas County, moves to Spokane, it goes down to the Tri-Cities, it goes to Seattle. And so one of the things that across the United States that is occurring is if you have an area that has some crime in it, then people are investing into real-time crime centers or real-time information centers. And so we pitched an idea to the county commissioners where we want to invest in technology that can help us keep our community safer by having a real-time information or crime center. And what that allows us to do is put people like dispatchers who are really good at their jobs alongside investigators, and they can use technology to be directly involved in an incident that's happening right now and provide information over the radio or in other means that can help put officers in the right place at the right time to arrest or to stop the violence or to find a missing person, or maybe it's helping the fire department with identifying where the fire is or where the heat spots are at. So I think there's a variety of different things that technology can do, and that usually resides in a real-time crime center. Just to give you an example, multiple counties across the state are investing in these. Spokane County stood up their real-time crime center. It's been about a year or so that they, I think, went live, maybe a little longer than that. And they've invested in technology in order to produce real-time information to the people who are on the ground and doing investigations. We all went and visited the Spokane County Sheriff's Office Real-Time Crime Center last year. And while we were there, there was an incident where a person had walked on a school campus with a firearm. And so immediately they started pulling up multiple cameras. They were using license plate readers. They were using live video cameras. And they had video of this person walking around on campus with a long gun, with a rifle. It turned out to be a BB gun or some sort of a pellet gun or something like that. But they were able to produce and provide information right away to the people who were responding to the scene to keep all of the children safe that were in the school. And so we got to see this real-time crime center react in real time and show us what the capabilities were using their technology. And we want to have that same opportunity. We have crime in Yakima County, and we believe that we can keep people safer by providing information right now. And that's what our intent is.
Okay. I'm kind of curious how the real-time crime center differs from Flock ALPRs that are already, out there and functioning.
So a real-time crime center isn't necessarily just one piece of technology, right? We're using multiple pieces of technology to help solve the real-time incident that we're dealing with. Flock would be a component of that. We have the infrastructure right now. We have license plate readers. And recently the county commissioners allotted a year ago $2 million to invest into live video cameras that we were going to be placing out into the community on public roadways. Again, no expectation of privacy, to help us in investigating these crimes that are going on, and they're to help augment the license plate readers. And so, in addition to that, there's other things that we would invest into. Part of that would be dispatch. Part of that would be using things like data integrators that could help mine our data that we already have access to a little quicker, so that we're not logging into a million different systems and trying to identify, pieces of information that we would need for evidence. And so, what a data integrator does is basically combine the data that we already have access to and provide us like a Google search bar, essentially, to be able to quickly search that data. We have this records management system it's called Spillman, and we every time we make contact with someone in law enforcement, we document that in there, and I know you're familiar with that, and we write our reports in there, and that's where 911 calls come into, and they add the data in there from that. So, but sometimes it can be a little clunky and it can be a little cumbersome to be able to search it. And if you haven't used it for very long, it can be difficult to use it to your advantage to be able to help solve a crime. And so we want to provide our officers with the best technology to help keep the community safe. And that requires investment. But aside from that, it requires tools. And so the county commissioners were gracious enough to hear us and hear what our pitch was. And they said, let's try it out, see what happens. And so a real-time crime center isn't necessarily just one piece there's multiple pieces of technology that come together to work towards keeping the community safe. So flock would be, or license plate readers would be a part of that.
Okay. The data aggregator, what exactly, is there a brand of that? Like, is that also Flock? Is it like Flock Nova?
We're not using Flock Nova right now. That is an option. There's a variety of different options out there.
Yeah.
And we're kind of in the testing mode with a few different ones to kind of see what they look like and see which one we think would be best. We haven't identified which one we feel would be best to spend the money on yet, but we're still kind of in the early stages of what that would look like. So I don't know that I could really give you an answer on that at the moment.
No worries. I was just curious. So are these real-time crime centers, are these like additional cameras you guys are wanting to purchase or for the city? I know you said it's various things, but so is it like some additional cameras as well?
Yeah, so part of the spend that the county commissioners gave us was specifically for live video cameras and for an additional few license plate readers where we didn't have them in the county area. And so we are going to be installing just under 300 more cameras, live and LPR, across the county. That was what the money was allocated for from the county commissioners.
Okay, so around 300 new cameras.
And currently, that cost would not be incurred by the city at this point because the county has paid for the first 2 years of that. And then if the decision was made and, maybe we put them in for 2 years and it's something that's not effective and we decided to not move forward with that. It may be something that's not effective. But if at the end of that first contract, we decided to move forward as a county, then there would be a cost to the city again. But right now, there's some questions about, public disclosure and the release and how much staff hours would be required to do that. And, we're waiting on legislation from the state right now on what that would look like. But at this point, there is no additional funds that would impact the city's budget.
Okay. And so I'm guessing the 300 cameras is countywide, correct?
Correct.
How many more would that add to the city of Yakima? Do you know?
I think there was initial plans were 76.
How much?
76.
76. Okay.
I think right now we're holding off with some answers on public disclosure and working with the county to figure that portion of that out.
Okay. And what is like the current status of that whole project, the RTCC project?
So the RTCC, the Real-Time Crime Center, is really just in its infancy right now. I wouldn't even say that we have the funding to really support it at the moment, okay? But we're investigating what that would look like. What is that going to cost? What benefit does it have? What impact does it have with the community? And can we pool our resources to be more effective? Really, I think that's what it's all about. Instead of us being our own silos and investigating crime separately, we're really trying to pool our resources and see how we can benefit each other by having a larger pot that we can take out of because it's benefiting everybody in the community and everybody in the county. So I guess to really say what it looks like, I don't know what it's going to even look like at the moment. I think we have a dream of what it could look like, and we're working towards that. I know that we're working towards maybe identifying a location where we could house it at, right? Where we could put people into eventually if we needed to staff it 24/7. I know we're looking at, like I said, a variety of different options, a variety of different pieces of technology. As you know, we have drones, or drone sounds like a derogatory word, but it's not, but that's what everybody calls it. We have these UASs that we use to investigate collisions, major crimes, and it gives a really good perspective of the scene that you can't get elsewhere unless you put a ladder truck up in the air, and you're 100 feet up in the air, which doesn't seem reasonable. And quickly we can use another piece of technology to help document the scene, or to look for someone who has hurt someone, or to look for someone who's missing. I know when I was in Sela, when we first got our drones there, the first time we used them actually was on a county call over in the Glede area, and a person had walked away from their home and had some mental health issues, and it was in the middle of the night, and so we utilized that technology to find that person and bring them home safely to their family. And so I think that this real-time crime center mentality is not just, like I said, a couple pieces of technology. It's using everything that we have and really good investigators and really good dispatchers to produce information in real time to support the community.
Gotcha. So I know you mentioned at the study session that might require a new public records employee. Is that to, like, dish out these, extra public records requests for the...
Right, that's the question I think we're talking about right now is in the city is who owns the records, because that has to deal with who fulfills the public disclosure request. And then if there's legislation that would change what is and what isn't a public disclosure and something that has to be disclosed. And I know that if you're following the bills that are at the legislature right now, they deal with ALPRs and other data and information. So right now, we don't know what that would look like as far as staffing at the city, but we looked at, I think it's about $97,000 for someone to work in the clerk's office to do public records. And so if we identified we needed more people, that's the cost of each employee moving forward for the city. I don't know what it would be for the other agencies, but we comply with the public records disclosure request, and so that we just have to identify how many people or what the impact of work is on them. And then if we had to add additional staff, we'd have to figure that out as far as, is it one or two or a half person, is it, so
right.
A lot of that's unknown at this point just because of legislation. And then the county currently owns the records right now, as far as if we the live cameras. So they're the ones ideally would be ultimately responsible, we believe. So more work for the sheriff's people to know, but I think looking forward, all those things have to be looked at. Real-time crime center, Dustin talked about, we're trying to figure out what the best data mining, data integrator is, what the best camera systems are, what the best ALPRs are, the UASs, what does all that look like as a dollar figure, and then working collaboratively to be able to figure out, can we as a county, apply for grants? Are there things out there that could help offset the cost to our community? I know the radio tax is a perfect example of everybody collaborating. We're going to get a radio system that's been needed for my entire career, probably the sheriff's entire career. Yeah. We're finally moving. I think there's a lot more collaboration going on between the chiefs. I think we work well together, the sheriff. And so I think ultimately we're trying to find a way that the entire county can work together and find funding sources that at least impact on individual cities and then provide the biggest impact on lowering crime throughout the entire county.
Okay, gotcha. All right, I kind of wanted to get into the capabilities of the cameras beyond just license plates. I know you mentioned that they've been used to help find missing people and stuff like that. I'm kind of curious, I guess, what they can detect besides just license plates.
So you're talking about the license plate reader specifically?
Well, I know there's the ALPRs, and then there's the you have the mobile units as well, and those are all Flock branded. I'm just curious on, is there a difference between the two?
No, they're the same. The difference is whether or not they sit on a pole with a solar panel
or
they mount to something different. That's really the only difference.
Yeah.
So as far as the automatic license plate readers, they're not detecting necessarily the license plate. The camera's not doing that part of it, okay? The camera's taking a picture, and then Flock has their software that they overlay over the top of the image, and that is what actually detects the license plate. And what else can they detect? They can detect the color of the car. They can detect if it has, a roof rack, or if it has stickers on the side of the car or on the back window. It can detect if it has a license plate or if it doesn't have a license plate. So it can do that type of, the software can see those type of things in the picture, if that makes sense. The camera themselves are just taking pictures.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't detect the driver, that sort of thing.
No.
It just doesn't go there. That's why the live cameras for us would be fantastic, because we would have more detail for specific incidents. So when live cameras, which would be activated in a certain area if we have a Flock hit. So then if we hit, is there more to see? That's the whole idea behind a live camera. And we haven't talked about this yet. And I don't know if maybe you have a question, but because we're so low staffed here, this is really important. No one's monitoring these cameras. There's no human that's just looking at these cameras all the time and looking for things. It's only when we have a very legitimate criminal justice or public safety reason do we look at something very specific. So it's interesting that of all these millions of bits of information that the flock camera captures every single minute of the day, it seems like we look at just a sliver of it, hardly anything. And even when we get live cameras, no one's going to be watching them unless we have a specific reason to do so. And really, why? We don't have the people. That's why we want the flock system to remain active in the first place. It gives us that extra piece that we just will never get because I have the smallest sheriff's office in the state per population, in the second biggest county with some of the highest rates of crime. Why wouldn't we pursue technology like this to make people safer in this county? It's a no-brainer for us. So that's where we are, and the chief here has made a good case that it's more economical for the communities as well. People are expensive, so if technology can kind of fill in some of those holes, it's a great tool for us.
Yeah, I know, like, obviously nobody's going to be there monitoring the camera all the time because that seems like a ridiculous thing, right? But
Yep.
I guess they are retroactively searchable, correct? So like everything is being recorded and AI is being used to like aggregate the data and essentially put it all into a searchable format.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to have someone there all the time, correct? I mean, like you can retroact.
It's there for 30 days.
30 days, yeah.
And then 30 days and it's gone. There's no way, at least for us, to get it. It's gone 30 days and it's gone forever.
Gotcha.
So that's it's a much more immediate tool.
The other part of that is you need a case number and a reason, and it tracks who does the hookup. Like if I was to log in and want to search for a vehicle, I have to put in a case number and an offense, and then it's going to track back to my login. So I know who did it, and you can go back and so all that stuff creates an audit trail too to go back and see who's using it for what. So I think that you can't just put in, I want to look for put in my license plate. I can't just put it in there because it won't allow me to do the search without that information of a case number and then a reason for the search. So it's not just, you can't just go in and just start looking at cameras. There has to be the reason to go.
So all of our systems are like that. All of our data systems are so tightly controlled and audited. Literally, when we get into one of our data systems, be it stolen or anything else, every single keystroke of every person is always recorded. And we always remind our young guys and gals that repeatedly, because we know what you're doing. Maybe I'd love to know where Chief Boyle's having lunch, but I can't. There's no way I can use any of that technology for that. It's just those very, very slim reasons that meet our standards.
And I would just add to that you made a mention, Sky, that it's aggregating the data, right? The system Flock is basically putting it in one singular location so that we have easy access to it and search what we need to search for based off of the crime that we're investigating, or the help that someone needs for a missing person or whatever, the issue is that they've called us for. What's interesting about it though is that the way that it works is there's so much data in there, right? I mean, when you talk about, we have just under 300 LPRs in the county, okay, that we all have access to each other's cameras. There's so many images in there. Could you imagine trying to search through all those images for the needle in the haystack that you're looking for? It would be very difficult to do that, right? And no one here, and no one in any one of our departments has the time to search through millions and millions of images to find the one that you're looking for to help solve the crime. And so that is why it's so nice to have a system that can say, okay, what do you want to search by? What are the parameters you want to search? Okay, I'm looking for a brown Ford pickup truck that has a truck box. I just made that up. I've never searched for that before that I'm aware of. But what it allows us to do is really narrow down our search for the one thing that we're looking for, okay? The nice part about the live video cameras, and yes, they do record for 30 days and they're constantly recording. That's true. But the nice part about them is, could you imagine trying to look through 24 hours of video on 300 different live video cameras? That would be impossible. And so what it does allow us to do is, again, narrow down our search. Can you imagine if how many people in Yakima County have been involved in hit and run as a victim? A lot. And so we use license plate readers currently to identify what the run vehicle was. Who's the suspect that hit someone and then took off from the scene? Live video would provide us another opportunity, and there's not enough live video cameras out there to install in Yakima County on every corner. We can't afford it, number one, but we can put them in strategic locations that help us identify suspects potentially. But if we do have an incident that happened on live video, then we can go back and see who the actual person was that caused the collision if we needed to, right? Or the person who shot someone, if that's what we're looking for. And so why wouldn't we use that technology to our advantage to help solve crime, to bring justice to a victim who was just assaulted, or a family member was injured or killed? We want to be able to bring justice to that family, and to help them feel like we did a good job, and we need technology to be able to do that.
Just to make a link to that, it's no different than if there's a theft today at Macy's at the mall. We go there and we grab that. It's owned by the company, but we take that video and we're using the same the stuff that's taken in the public in the same manner. We'd identify people using it the same way we collect it from Safeway, we collect it from all these other businesses. And so that's again, just something that's in the public venue. There's no expectation of privacy on the side of the road. So
I think we all have success stories, and some of these success stories would never have happened if it wasn't for the flock. Recently, we had a couple that was viciously attacked and robbed in the Lower Valley, and they didn't have much information. They didn't know who this guy was. They didn't get a license plate on the car, but using the flock system, looking for it. Like you said, I want to make this up. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was a red four-door sedan, whatever it is. They typed that parameters in, and we caught him. He went through a flock camera. Now, and just like what the chief at the end of the table there said, the flock camera points us to that car, but then it's the detectives that have to go and really figure out who was in the car, get a great statement or other evidence. But it pointed us in that direction. And I'm pretty confident saying if we had not located that car with the flock system, those folks would have never had any sort of justice for that attack and robbery. We would have never figured it out. Can you imagine how many red four-door cars are rolling around right now? We never would have figured it out. And that's why it's pretty important to us, because I'm getting close to when I have to leave. And there's one last thing I want to talk about real quickly is when this system first went into effect in summer of 2022, I looked it up, within a week, 2 weeks, there was a retired nurse that was driven over out in West Yakima and killed. The flock system, brand new cameras stood up by the city of Yakima, helped us solve that crime. Would we have solved it without the flock cameras? Maybe we would have, but I will tell you that it definitely sped up the process and we quickly identified the offender. That is good stuff. And that's something that the entire community should be proud of, that the city of Yakima used money to do that so that we have that resource. And that's kind of crazy too. Within a week of flipping the switch, such a significant crime was solved.
What's interesting is that, these pictures that these cameras are taking, in this case that the sheriff's talking about, we had images of the vehicle prior to striking the nurse. And then we had images after striking the nurse and there was damage on the vehicle. Okay, if depending on the vehicle and how many of them are out on the road at any given time in a city of 100,000 people, you can imagine that there's a lot of different cars. There's a lot of them that look very similar. And so how great is it that we're able to identify the car that was involved in the incident and it's got a license plate on it. And then we use our other access that we have, the other tools, and that's how we identify the person. That's great police work. That's the type of stuff that we need to do a good job in investigating our cases. And so I just wanted to point that out, that you have these images beforehand and images afterwards. And I think people have this impression that they're following them around. I don't have enough time in my day to be able to do that. But if someone runs over someone, I'm going to spend the time to look for that vehicle. And how great is it to have evidence of the damage on the car after the collision happened? That's great.
Yeah, that was actually a textbook case of flock capability. And again, within a week of turning it on right here in Yakima. Pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
And now's a good time to break. I'm going to stand up, grab my cowboy hat, and when I amble on out of here.
All right. Thank
These
you for
two
your
guys
time.
obviously are doing it. You'll get everything you need and more. But
So are the cameras like? I know you guys had some at the fair for like testing purposes.
Mhm.
Are they able to record like certain aspects of people, like besides just license plates? You know, obviously.
So the live video cameras can they're obviously recording a video,
Right, right.
And so again, the cameras themselves are not necessarily identifying anything. The software that the company uses is helping identify what it is that we're looking for potentially. I'll talk about the elephant in the room, which is that of facial recognition. They do not do any facial recognition. Okay. The reason why is because facial recognition cameras require a specific type of technology, like something that can measure your face, like LiDAR or something like that. And so these cameras do not do that. So we can't tell who someone is. The technology just doesn't do it at the moment. Okay. And we have no, we have no ideas or plans to put any type of facial recognition in place that we want to monitor the people and just be seeing who's walking around all the time. We don't want to do that. We feel like that would be not appropriate. And so, but what it can do is it can identify shapes, colors, stuff like that. So in the fair, you asked about the fair. We kind of tested out this real-time crime center idea that we had. So we worked with all the departments that were going to be present at the fair, and we worked with the Office of Emergency Management, and we worked with the fairgrounds, and we had a conversation about this, that we wanted to bring these trailers in here that were live video cameras to help keep the area safe. And the intent was that in the event that a crime happens, because it does happen at the fair, we wanted to be able to have evidence to be able to support the investigation, the report that we were going to write, and identify who the person was that did X, Y, and Z. However, we also wanted to help solve the problem that takes up a lot of law enforcement's time at the fair, and that is missing children. A lot of children walk away, and then you can't find them right away, and then we spend time walking around looking for them and trying to identify parents and all the things. And so what we developed and what they've had in place for a while was wristbands for kids. And so we purchased the wristbands, and we made them certain colors so that we knew what to look for on these cameras in the event that a child walked away. And so can the cameras do a search for a person wearing a yellow wristband? It can. Can the person do a search for a person? I say person, but I'm mentioning like colors and shapes, right? Can I identify like someone that might be wearing pink clothing? It can. Can you say a pink clothing or a pink shirt with a yellow wristband? It can do that. Is it going to tell me if Dustin Soptich is walking around the fair? It will not do that. Okay, so I want to make it very clear that we're not doing any type of facial recognition. Does it help us solve crime? Yeah. At the fairgrounds, we had someone who stole someone's purse. And they walked around with the purse and removed some items from it, disposed of the purse. Now, the Yakima Police Department was the agency that was responsible for investigating crime at the fair. And so, but we had multiple agencies that were involved in this real-time crime center thought. And so we had a trailer there that had access to the cameras with some big screens in it. And they were assisting Yakima Police identify who the possible suspect would be from this theft. And where was the purse dumped at, and that kind of thing. And like I said, I think the community expects that from us. In this day and age, they expect that we're going to try to solve their crime for them. And that means we got to use technology to do that. But did we also find multiple missing children? We did. And that's awesome. That's fantastic. We did more of the missing children thing than we did anything with crime. I think this year at the fair, we actually didn't have that much crime at the fair.
No, we never. There's not usually a significant amount of crime at the fairgrounds, but having worked the fair for over 20 years, lost children is probably the number one thing we spend time. Lots in crowd management down there. And we've tried a number of different routes to be able to reunite kids quickly, providing a phone number on their wristband if the kids get lost. But that requires someone to actually stop and find this kid that's looking, is this kid look lost, and then call the number. This gave us, when they report to either crowd management or one of the police officers, hey, I lost my child, we would do a search. Usually quickly be able to reunite them a lot faster than spending, potentially hours. And, recovering a purse that's dumped in a garbage can that's there. It's almost impossible to go to the right garbage can without some help from a video that's there. Another concept, we use the trailers in try to proof of concept. And when we had the cruise night one night back in August, we had a murder in the afternoon. We had a vehicle that was associated with the murder. The way the crime center would work, you talked about it would, the LPR, we turn on a live camera, be able to find it. In that case, there was a LPR hit on the suspect vehicle on Yakima Avenue. The officer that had access to the camera found the vehicle on Yakima Avenue. Then officers converged on the area, found the car. We actually had a drone up at the same time because we utilize UASs in a lot of our downtown events to look on roofs for safety of the people that are up there, or people that potentially causing problems, or just whatever it is that's a public safety issue with our drones. So we actually integrated all three of those, identified the suspect, and then unfortunately that led to a pursuit that ended up in an officer-involved shooting. But the proof of concept was there. The LPR hit. The video, find it on video. We had drones up, which were providing real-time information to people that were responding. So it does work. It's just, again, we're in the developmental phase, identifying the right systems, and then can we afford it as a county? As individual cities and county, can we afford to put this into place? But I think the long-term benefit to the community from this, the ability to solve crime or, locate people that Dustin talked about, there's places that run a drone as a first responder, where they put it up and say, say you have a fire call, that drone in the middle of the night, firemen have to wake up in the middle of the night, their stuff, drive to the area, police officers have to drive there. If there's a fire starting, you can put a drone up, look in that area for the fire, or if you had live feed video cameras, yeah, it is a good fire. How do we need to attack this? How do we need to solve this problem? I know we use our drones a lot, and Dustin talked about one example of missing people that walk away. If someone walks away in the middle of the night, it's cold, it's dark, then, people that have mental health issues, small children, kids with autism that walk away in the middle of the night, we're trying to find them, and it's a needle in a haystack out in Glebe area. And you've got countywide probably 25 cops working the entire valley, and can we search that effectively on foot? No. And find that person. You put a drone up, you find where the person's likely at, or dispel where they're at. So we're not spending a lot of time. We think they went north. We're spending a lot of time looking north, and we can clear it with the drone. And you start focusing our area to where the person may have gone to instead of, so it's not only being used to find those people that commit crimes, but to reunite people that they get lost. So
I think another example of that is recently we had the flooding situation. And during the floods in the morning, in Union Gap, we had a discussion about what we were going to do to make sure that people along the Greenway weren't going to be affected by the flood. And so we put one of our drones up in the air, and it has what the chief is talking about is FLIR. It has forward-looking infrared, which basically can tell you heat signatures. And we use that technology to find people who were staying over by the Greenway, who, if we didn't contact them, they probably would have lost their lives. And so we were able to wake them up because there's a loudspeaker on the drone. And we woke them up and we told them that that they have water all around. They need to try to vacate the area so they don't get hurt. And unfortunately, we found 2 people that were surrounded by water. And at the time, it was about 20 feet away from them. By the time we got a helicopter there, to try to get them there, they were standing in about 3 feet of water. And so, but we wouldn't have known that if we didn't use technology to our advantage. And so going back to this concept of a real-time crime center, if we're struggling to help identify victims, suspects, endangered people, then a real-time crime center could have a live screen up and utilize that to their ability to help push officers in the right directions, to notify people of a big fire, or to notify people of a flood that's coming that they're completely unaware of because they don't have access to media or the news or the weather or anything like that, right? So we have to use technology to our advantage in everything that we do in our careers.
Okay, great. Appreciate it. I wanted to talk a little bit about the data sharing and data access of the flock systems. I think I heard that I looked on the flock transparency portal, and it said that Yakima PD shares flock data with over 100 different law enforcement agencies, if I'm correct. So that's other cities in the county and stuff. Is there a certain criteria that they have to meet in order to be on that list, or is it just?
Right now we're sharing with in-state only. We turned it to it's only agencies within Yakima or Washington State. And so anybody that was in Washington State, we automatically share with. If they're outside of the area, or outside of the state, they'd have to send us a request that we'd have to approve, but we've taken all those agencies off of our sharing network right now. And a lot of the legislation that's been coming through will be sharing in state only. And I think a lot of the agencies, I believe Union Gap shares only in state. And so right now, again, sharing within the state helps us and allowing us to see their cameras. Going back to stories of success stories, we had a hit and run at 1600 West Knob Hill. Motorcycles have run over the summer. The car started to alert on flock in the wall area, which led our investigators down there. We recovered the car. Identified the person driving at the time. Without that system, we wouldn't have known who was driving around the wall. So after, like I said, we were sharing nationwide, and then we turned it down to just within the state of Washington.
Yeah, and the sharing, the way that it works is Flock is only allowing access to the law enforcement cameras to law enforcement. No one else has access to those. So no person, even if a business owner wanted to install, some cameras on their property for their own purposes, they don't get access to our law enforcement cameras. They can share their cameras with us so we can get their images if they want us to currently. But we don't share our images with anybody that is not law enforcement. That's not how it works. And the way that the sharing works is it's almost kind of like, I want to describe it kind of like a Facebook friend, like you basically send a request out and you say, hey, we want to share cameras with you. And you know that they're a law enforcement entity because Flock has already vetted them and showed that, hey, this is Union Gap Police Department, and I'm asking the Yakima Police Department if we can share cameras. And if it makes sense to do that because we're right next to each other or within the same state and we know that our crime is moving about the state, then that would make sense. We would share the cameras with them. Again, everything is still recorded. If their people search our cameras, I can see it on our network and I can see who searched, when they searched, what time it was, what the parameters were. I can see all those things. And so the auditing ability is really pretty good. Do I think that we will, at some point identify little things that we need to tweak and correct and improve on? I do. I think that every technology that comes out is always in the phase of improving something in some way, shape, or form. Just like the very camera that you have, there's always going to be something better that comes out that provides a better capability or a better way to keep it more secure or something to that effect. And so we're always looking at those options to make sure that we're keeping our data secure and that we're only sharing with the people that we need to share with.
Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to address that because I know a lot of people are, worried that federal agencies are on that list of shared, data sharing type things. So do federal agencies have a direct access to your feeds at all?
They do not. So
okay.
Flock, several months ago when this became, maybe even a year ago now, when this started becoming more of a hot button topic, Flock didn't, to my knowledge, for a long period of time, did actually not even give accounts to federal entities. I know that maybe some of that has happened now, but that wasn't really a thing. When we first got Flock in Yakima in 22, no federal agency had access to Flock. And now I'm sure that they're seeing the potential of using it as a good tool as well. But we know that we have to cooperate with the Keep Washington Working Act. And so specifically with ICE, we don't share any images with them whatsoever. And there's no federal entities that we are sharing images with at all, actually. At least from anybody that I'm aware of in Yakima County or anybody probably in the state. I'm sure that it's a hot enough button right now that no one is sharing any images with any federal entity. We want to make sure that we have the trust of the public. And I think that's incredibly important. And if we violate that trust, then eventually the public could take that away from us. And we think this is a good enough tool that we don't want to ruin that. And so to answer your question, no one to my knowledge in the county has access or has given access to the federal government to share their images with them.
Okay. Yeah, because I was kind of curious how, I know you guys can share data with other cities here and other police departments, but I was curious if if a federal agency did a third party, they went through one of your partner cities and then could access your data through them, essentially. I was wondering if that was a possibility.
So that would be a possibility if let's say that, let's say a department on the west side had someone that they gave access to I guess it depends on how you're saying it. Are you saying, are they sitting down at their computer and they're using their login to do that? Or what are you saying exactly?
I guess like how you, yeah, I guess so. How you share data with different cities.
Mm-hmm.
If that city wanted to share data with a federal agency, and then they accessed your data through your shared.
So that's not how it works.
Okay.
Right? So now that I understand your question, I can explain a little better. So the way that it works is I'm only in control of my cameras.
Right.
Okay. So I can't give Yakima Police Department's access. I can't give access to their cameras to anybody else. If they grant access to me, then I have access. That's like a one-way, or a two-way communication right there, right? So I can't just inadvertently give the access that I have Yakima cameras to anybody else. So I can't allow federal agencies to. I can't be like, oh yeah, I'll give you access to Yakima's cameras. That's not how it works.
Right.
Yakima gives their access to who they want. Union Gap gives access to who they want. And so if someone on the west side, for example, gave access to their cameras for their police department to a federal entity, there's no way for them to give access to them for our cameras. That's not how it works.
Right.
So if the federal agency wanted access to our cameras, they would have to request them from each one of our entities and ask for permission to access them.
Gotcha. So
I understood one of your questions. If I'm heard it a little differently, you're asking like an individual. Like if you asking, say, you work for Department of Homeland Security, you work for ICE,
right,
and you call one of our officers and say, "Hey, we check this car." Were you asking that way?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a possibility. I mean, I can't say that no one could do that. I mean, it's the same way they could ask, "Could you join this car in the Department of Licensing, the Washington State Access System? Could you run this car?"
Right.
Which again would be a violation of Keep Washington Working if they're using it for a civil immigration enforcement. But if you called me and said, "Hey, can you run this car and check it?" I would have to be completing the login under a case number and then what the reason for that search was. And if I didn't put, a civil immigration and I falsified my reason for the search, that's an individual problem for that employee. And, if our agency found that, we would report that again to that agency that they're number one, falsified a government search or a search parameters. And if I found that inside my organization, just like I know if Dustin found that out, if an immigration enforcement officer called one of our officers, said, "Hey, need the search," and they falsified that, it likely be terminated for misuse of the system. Again, relying on the official document that we're creating. So we would handle that as a disciplinary issue within the organization. Can I say that would never happen? I mean, I would be wrong, because you could same concept as somebody could access the Washington State Department of Licensing under that same guise, which doesn't have as good a tracking system. You can actually I can run a plate. It tells me I ran the plate, but I don't put a reason why I ran the plate in the system. So I mean, there's a number of possibilities. Anything can be misused, but again, putting safeguards in place and educating our employees and holding our people accountable within our own organizations limits the ability for people to misuse the system. Okay. I think that's, I was understanding, that's why I understood part of your question.
Yeah, that's kind of how I had it in my mind. I just couldn't, say
it. It's like, did the police go to my neighbor's house? And you call me and say, "Hey, what did the police go to the neighbor's house?" I can't just look in and tell you. And that's, again, a misuse of the system. I can't just say, "Hey," now if you had an arrest warrant, I could tell somebody, because that's a public, it's listed in the county. But I can't say, "Hey, this is what we went to your neighbor's house. This is who drives the car that parked in front of your house." We don't release that information.
Right. Yeah, I guess my thought was just, right, like an agent requested, say, like YPD, they said something like, "Hey, can you check this plate for me?" But the camera was like in Union Gap, right? So YPD used their access to Union Gap's data. And then
again, we'd have to put a search in,
right?
Put case number, reason for the search, and then the officer would have to be falsifying the record of why they're searching, which would create an issue for their with my organization and with Dustin's and any other organizations in there.
Gotcha. All right, that answered it perfectly. Thank you. Let's see. Talked about the fair already. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, like, some people are worried that these cameras are essentially a violation of, like, the Fourth Amendment. And I kind of wanted to give an example of their point of view on that. So like phone GPS location data usually requires a warrant due to privacy concerns to, access that for officers. But with this system, it's a continuous camera-based location tracking system, essentially, that you can retroactively search. Do you think that in any way kind of mimics the same thing as the phone data collection?
So the phone itself is actually a far more protected thing than just the GPS, right?
Right.
Normally, to get into a phone, you have to have, your Face ID, or you have to have a code or a PIN or something like that. And it's reasonable to expect that you're going to be private in your phone because of all of the data that you have inside of there. That's what's really protected. And you're right, as far as GPS, if we say, do we have a method if we got a search warrant, a judge approves it, and we feel that there's a reason for us to identify where this phone is located at, can we do that? Is there technology to do that? Yes, there is. Through the phone companies, we can issue them the search warrant, and they can give us the data locations of where that particular phone is at. The difference, I think, in which I think has been proven in the courts already, and probably will be heard again in the future, I'm sure, is that on the roadway, as you are driving about on the roadway, any person could stand on the edge of the roadway and could video that. And if there was enough people that corroborated together, they could identify in some way, shape, or form where you're driving at. And that would be illegal because you're on the public roadway. You're on the public right of way. Okay. Whereas on a phone, you purchase that phone and you have that phone with you all the time, and it's in your home, it's in your car, inside of your car, or it is, it's in your pocket. And so that is a protected place. It's not in plain view. And so we could go into an exhaustive discussion about what plain view doctrine is, but we won't do that here. But the plain view doctrine basically says that if you are in a public space and anybody from any location could see you because they can be there as well, then that is called the plain view doctrine. So if a person was out in the driving around on the roadway in their vehicle, and their vehicle has passed by a store multiple times, and Dustin is standing there looking at it, then I would say, oh, I've seen that car 4 times today, and that wouldn't be we're not tracking the vehicle. I just I noticed that it passed by that many times. Now you're referencing the fact that these cameras kind of talk to each other, and they do. Okay. They're going to tell you if that car has, Dustin's patrol car has driven by X amount of cameras. It can do that. Are we doing that? No. We're doing that if we have a very specific reason to search for it, right? In the event that someone committed a homicide in Yakima or in Union Gap, and we want to know where that car is located at, I would think the public would expect us to use every tool possible to identify where that car is located at so we can recover the car for evidence and we can identify who was driving it. They would expect us to do that. We would do the same thing if we knew what your phone number was. It would be no different. Or if you were taking images with a camera and it's possible that camera took images of the scene, we would try to get a warrant to seize that camera so that we could use it as evidence in our case. See what I'm saying? So I'm relating it to a variety of different things. And because it's in a public space in plain view, there's no expectation of privacy. I understand the concern, but in reality, there's no time for me to sit down and look at a random person and identify I wouldn't even know what car they're driving around. The only way I would know that is just because a witness told me, hey, you guys should look for this car. This is the car that I saw leaving the scene. That is when I'm going to enter the system. That is when I'm going to start plugging all the information in. And yes, then I'm going to know. I'm going to ask, where has that car been in the last 30 days potentially, or in the last 24 hours? Because that gives me a pointer tool of where I need to focus my efforts. What other cameras do I need to access? Whose doors do I need to knock on to see if they're willing to share their Ring doorbell camera footage with us? What stores did he go into to purchase, merchandise that he used to commit the crime potentially? I'm going to use all that to my advantage to try to investigate this case. And so I hope that helps explain a little bit about like the differences between the privacy issue in your personal device that you have with you in your home or in your pocket that I would not normally see because it's not in plain view to me, versus someone who's driving about on the roadway. Does that help explain it a little bit, or do you have more questions about that?
No, that helps explain it. Yeah. Okay. I did want to talk a little bit about misidentification. I know there was a case in Aurora, Colorado, where there was a $1.9 million settlement after a ALPR misidentification led to a family being detained at gunpoint. And I know while those are rare cases, obviously they do happen. And I just want to make sure, does that happen often here in Yakima at all? Does there ever any misidentifications? Or?
I would say there's no more. I'd say the way the system works, you have the hit. Sometimes the plate doesn't match what's there. We ask our officers they're supposed to, they get behind and say it's a stolen car and there's a license, an individual license plate. It goes off on the ALPR. They get behind it. They again confirm that that's the correct plate for the correct stolen car. If that makes sense. And then they'll run it again and wash it. Usually it'll come back that it's stolen and then they make the stop. Misidentification can happen in any circumstance. I'll give an example of, say we had a murder today and it happened right out here at the corner and it's a blue Honda with a white bumper, and drives in the city of Yakima. Our officers find a car that's a blue Honda with a white bumper. They stop it and it turns out there's no, take out the block game system. They stop that car and it's totally not involved because it's just another blue Honda with a white bumper. Misidentification can happen all the time. Someone says a guy wearing a light blue shirt and dark pants did this with a beard. We stop to talk to you on the roadway and it turns out it's not you. I mean, it's an investing. We're making the detention. I'm not familiar with the Aurora, Colorado case, so I can't really comment on that. So I apologize.
No.
But, we're doing the best with the tools that we have. And I think this actually narrows it a lot more than what, just a blue Honda with a white bumper. Now we can check the camera system and actually probably get the real license plate because it passed an ALPR close to here. It actually, I think, would cut down on some misidentification from some of our detentions on some of those stops because of having more specific data to the car. Or there's, when you find the car in the block system and it has a, U.S. Army across the back where I graduated, senior 2024, that we'd see that on the back of the car, which helps add to what the witnesses, because I think early on in this conversation, Dustin said, people see a car and it's a blue Honda or, they think it is. That helps us narrow the search down. And then we find out a vehicle that maybe is registered to someone that we know is a gang member that was named as a potential suspect. That's one more piece of evidence. Then we use that to, again, narrow things down. Maybe we get a search warrant for cell data. There's all these things that it's just one piece of the tool. It's not because your car's on ALPR that that's the only reason we detain you. It's one piece of the evidence. So, can there be misidentification? Again, I'm not going to give you never will it ever happen.
Right.
But I think it actually helps slim the misidentification because I've been working prior to ALPR. I'd be working nights. We'd have a drive by and there's not a lot of cars on the road, and it's a blue Escalade and it passes and it's in the reasonable vicinity of where the homicide or shooting or robbery or whatever occurred. And our officers stopped that blue Escalade and it turns out it's totally not involved. So I think, but having the ALPR quickly, our officers are very good. And I know that the officers have been really good at being able to use this. They can do these searches really quick. You get a license plate with it, usually within minutes of the actual event occurring, which narrows down that potential for some misidentification. So.
Yeah, and the law allows us to, within a reasonable amount of time, contact people that are in a reasonable amount of, an area that's close to where the crime occurred. The law allows us to investigate that, gives us reasonable suspicion to contact someone and say, you're in the right area, you're driving a car that's very similar. And I would agree with Chief Boyle that what it really does is actually narrow down the opportunities for us to make misidentifications. I think, to be honest with you, it helps us exonerate people as well. If someone is suspected of being involved in a crime and they're telling us they didn't commit it, and we go back and look through either live video or license plate readers, and we're like, dude, that car never was there. That really helps us say, we need to start looking elsewhere. We need to start looking at different, maybe different people or different vehicles or something. Unfortunately, witnesses do misidentify suspect cars sometimes. That does happen as well. And they may tell us it's one color when it actually was a different color. And so what we can use this technology for is to get on there really quickly, like Chief Boyle is saying, and say, okay, I know the witness might be saying that it's actually a tan car. It's actually not tan, it's black. And that's really helpful for us when we're investigating cases, because we don't want to make the misidentifications. We don't want to, cause any unnecessary trauma to people. Like you said in Aurora, I'm not familiar with that one either, but I have been involved in cases before where we've had to, stop a car and we've taken them out of the car at gunpoint. That's uncomfortable for people. I understand that. And we do our very best not to misidentify vehicles, but this technology helps us actually put us in the right place at the right time so that we can make a safe arrest. And to be honest with you, we've made decisions based off of where we're going to make the arrest, because we can use this technology to say, okay, now the car's here, it's out of a populated area. Let's get it to where it's a little further out, and then we'll stop the car. So we're not putting as many people in harm's way when we need to effect an arrest with our weapons out, because we know who's in the car and how they're potentially going to address us, right? So I think there's actually there's a lot of pluses to this and how we can help narrow down the misidentifications, be more effective in the way we're making arrests, and use the tools that we have to put us in the right place, right time, in a better locale.
Okay, perfect. I was curious about the recent court ruling where they deemed like the flock data and images like public records, so now that's kind of become a thing where everyone's requesting all these records and stuff. I know Flock personally only keeps like the data for 30 days, like you said, but I mean, this kind of makes it so people can keep it indefinitely. Do you feel like that violates the terms that they only keep it 30 days? I know Flock itself only does, but do you think that causes an issue, I guess?
So I think that particularly in Washington State, this is a huge deal right now, right? And you're referring to the case in Soptich County. Is that the one you're referring to?
Correct, yes.
So there actually has been a couple cases since then where in other counties, they've deemed those images not public record. And so there's this miscommunication, or maybe I think the lawyers and the judges are trying to figure it out still. And that's why everybody's hoping for a legislative fix to this, where maybe the legislators identify these no longer as public record. That would be really helpful for cities, counties, and even for the state, for whoever it is that has access to license plate readers. And I think, back to your question, you're asking, like, is that, technically speaking, if the state sees it as a public record and someone wants to retain that data, they can. It's allowable within the law right now. And I agree with you that could potentially cause some issues. There is, there's certain websites out there that are focusing on using this to their advantage, and they're identifying where all these cameras are located at, and they're identifying, how police are using them. And here's the records that here's all of the public records requests that we've made asking about their data and what logs they're keeping, and are they doing audits and all these different things. There's websites out there that are trying to, for lack of a better term, they're trying to find us make a mistake, I think. And to be honest with you, we make mistakes sometimes. We're human beings and we make mistakes in law enforcement. We're doing our very best. But I think that if we could have a legislative fix to fix the public disclosure issue right now, I think that would maybe ease some concerns that people have of, like, are you going to have my vehicle forever? Are you retaining the truck, Dustin's personal truck that he drives around? Are you going to keep that forever, so-and-so? The police aren't doing that. We don't have the bandwidth to do that. We don't have the storage to do that. We're not keeping all these images forever, but we can't keep the public from doing it based off of the fact that the law allows them to right now. So if they're deeming it as a public record and they want to retain it, that's on them.
And I would concur with Dustin on that. And I think a lot of the public disclosure requests are just malicious in nature. They're clogging up the system. I think it was asked at council, the question was asked. And I think a lot of people are just trying to see if we'll make a mistake. There are people that are trying to make money off of some of this stuff, not just with not with flock system, but we comply with the laws of the state of Washington. And again, everything in the state of Washington has a retention schedule. So to your question about, can people keep things longer? Could that create an issue? Everything in the state of Washington has a retention schedule that we adhere to. And any document you could get, maybe say it has a 3-year retention by the state of Washington laws, the retention guidelines from the state. Could that person be kept forever? Anything can be kept forever. And so I think that what somebody does with it, once they get it, it's out of our control. Our So our responsibility is to provide that record, and what the person does with it, it's not up to us once they get it. So any document they get has, like I said, has a retention schedule in the state of Washington, and they can keep those records forever. We're not retaining them. We have the 30-day, and then we're able to solve them, to save them longer if it's a part of a public disclosure request, and then take the time to provide that to the person requesting it.
Okay, thank you. So I guess I have so with the RTCC thing, who is actually kind of leading that whole is it like the city? Is it all the cities combined in the county?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead with your question.
No, that was kind of
I think right now Dustin's kind of he's this most technologically.
Okay.
So, he's probably the most technologically smart of all of our chiefs, I would say. I'm talking about myself. I don't want to say anything about the rest of the valley or the sheriff. But I think that the county is the one that put the money up, the funding up to it for it originally. And I think there's a lot more discussion. It's in the infancy stage. I'm on board for something like that. I believe it would benefit our entire county. And anything we can do as a group will benefit because no city here can afford to do any of these things by themselves. Some of these programs are hundreds of thousands of dollars. And if you're putting in for grants as a collaborative group in our valley, it's a lot better. Your chances of getting funded become greater when you're working as a collaborative group. And then, the radio system's a perfect example. We've been needing a radio. I talked about it early on for over 30 years. The entire time I've been in this, working in law enforcement in the Yakima Valley, our radios have been bad. We were tracking issues in the mid 2005, 6, 7. And we're finally now as a group, since we've all gotten together, put something to the voters. They saw the value in it. It was led by the sheriff kind of getting that off the board. And so I think if we can come together and say, this is going to benefit our entire valley, not just the city of Union Gap, the city of Yakima, the sheriff's office, I think we have a better chance of, getting funding for it and then showing the impact countywide. Because like I said, our people that are committing bad acts are running through the entire valley and all of Eastern Washington over to the west side. So if we can work together as a group in this valley to help identify what we need, and we'll come up with a funding source. We have a regional SWAT team that we've made some improvements. The team's larger, the capabilities are better. We bought a negotiator band that when the city of Yakima was basically the ones that were responsible for the SWAT team, we would have never bought a negotiator band. And the cost of that was not possible for the city of Yakima. The costs were rising. We were setting aside money for it. It would have taken us 20 years to set aside money for this. And now we're able to do it in 2 years. We're able to buy it. We're looking at another piece of armor. And as a valley, we're all working together. We all pay our fair share. And there's cost to the city of Yakima. But that SWAT team doesn't deploy in the city of Yakima. I think 60% of the call outs were in the city of Yakima. But when we call in, it's our issue. Everybody from the valley comes here. Same reason why when Sunnyside calls or Union Gap calls or Tieton calls, we all go there because it's a collaborative group that's working together. And again, we couldn't afford a lot of what that team needs as a city itself. And Union Gap can't afford it, and Sheriff's Office can't afford it. So long term, I think all of these efforts are going to benefit not just the city of Yakima or the city of Union Gap, but everybody in the valley.
Yeah, I think we all have our strengths and weaknesses individually as people, as chiefs of police and the sheriff. And they call me the resident nerd sometimes, and so I think maybe that's why
I use a nicer term. You're technologically
and so maybe that's why I'm more passionate about it. Maybe that's one of the things why I'm kind of trying to push it. But to be honest with you, I would say that every one of the chiefs is on board with it. I wouldn't be spending my time and effort into it if I didn't think it was important, obviously. But if they didn't think it was important, then I wouldn't be putting my time into it either. Chief Boyle was involved in SWAT for years. That's not one of my fortes. That's not one of my strengths. I was on the negotiator team and I loved it. It was a great opportunity to be part of that. But each one of us, collective chiefs, have a different strength and weakness, and we offset each other. And that's what I think makes our collaborative group so great right now is that we're all different people and we all have different qualities, and we understand that. And so we offset those. When we need help with something, I'll ask for his help and he'll ask for my help. I think that's one of the cool parts about it.
Cool. All right. I did want to ask you something. I found out that did you previously work for Flock?
I did.
Okay. In what capacity did you work at Flock?
So I was a consultant. So in the time between when I left the Yakima Police Department, I left there as a sergeant of the gang unit, and I loved my job there. And I had an opportunity when we first implemented Flock we were the first agency in Washington State when I worked for Yakima. And the chief at the time, Chief Murray, asked us to focus on a license plate reader system. And so he tasked me as the person responsible for that, because he knew I was a little bit of a nerd as well. And so one of the things that he asked us to do was to look at the variety of different options out there, and ultimately we landed on Flock. After a long period of time, like 9 months, they were recruiting me for quite some time to see if I would go work for them at some point. Eventually I decided to make a career change and do that. And so my responsibility there was I was a consultant, a solutions consultant. And so because I had a law enforcement background, I was employed with them to travel around the West Coast. I was responsible for several states, and I went and talked with chiefs and sheriffs and command staff members to help them identify how they could use technology, and Flock in particular, to be successful in solving crime. Because of my experience with Yakima, and we were really successful really fast with Flock, they felt like I would be a good candidate for that job. And so, like I said, they recruited me, and I went and worked for them for a little bit. I was there for just a year and a couple of months, and then decided to come back to law enforcement. And I realized that I missed it, and I wanted to have another opportunity back at it again, and so that's why I'm back.
Gotcha. Just out of curiosity, how do you separate your prior relationship from your current role when recommending or implementing technology?
That's a great question. I assumed you were probably going to ask me that at some point. That's good. I'm agnostic as far as technology goes. I really don't care what technology you use, as long as it is going to support our efforts in law enforcement. Okay. So I can see how someone could say that would be a conflict of interest potentially for me, because I previously worked there. But to be honest with you, when I first did looking at all the different license plate readers that were out there, we chose Flock for a reason. We felt that they had the best infrastructure, the best software that would provide us the best product. And so, and I believed in that. And that's why I felt it would be okay to go work for them at some point, because I believed in their mission and and what they were trying to achieve. I came back to law enforcement ultimately because I wanted to be part of I wanted to have my career back again. I wanted to pay back into my retirement, and all those things. And so it's really important for me to make sure that I'm not, focusing too much just on Flock. That's why you'll hear me say multiple times LPR, ALPR, something like that, because I'm not trying to give the impression that that's the only company out there, because it's not. There's lots of great companies out there that did that. Now, specifically in Yakima County, we've invested so much money into Flock. Before I even went and worked for them, everybody was getting those cameras. It would make sense that we would continue investing in what we already have. We already have a specific system. If the chiefs came to me and said, we want to switch systems and we want to go to something else, I'd be like, all right, let's do it. Let's figure out how to make it work. It doesn't matter to me. Do I think they have a good product? Yeah, I think they do a pretty darn good job. They're very successful. And everybody across the country would tell you that. They would tell you that Flock is probably currently one of the better LPR systems out there, and their software and their ability to share has made law enforcement agencies very successful in solving crime. I think that's valuable. But when the times change, if there's a better product out there that I think would better serve the community, then I'll go that route. I have no necessarily an allegiance. Did I make friends there? Yes. But do I have an allegiance to Flock safety? I do not.
Gotcha. Perfect. All right. I'm kind of curious. So I know you're wanting to expand these new cameras, add more, like you said, I think it was 70 plus more cameras to the city. How many cameras do you think the city needs before we feel we're at a point where we are safer?
Well, I think right now the 76 aren't being installed only because they're waiting on some legislation, and the council's going to take it up, and it's a council decision on some of that where that goes with that. I mean, it's their that discussion will come up again. I think they tabled it after the study session to wait and see what the legislature did. I don't know. I can't give you an exact number. What would be great? I mean, what would be the number that's going to make our city safe. I think the more technology we can put in our community, the better we can. Anything we can do to enhance the officer's ability to do their job. Right now, and I say it every time I'm out there, there's probably today 8 officers and a supervisor working for the city of 100,000. That's just, it's not realistic to be able to effectively police with only that. It's sometimes during the day after 2:40 in the morning, we have 6 police officers and a sergeant working for a city of 100,000. That is, and unfortunately, we like to say, we say there's a fair amount of crime, and 6 police officers and a sergeant policing the city of Yakima is unacceptable, really, in my belief, and that's not enough. So we need to take advantage of whatever technology. So I can't give you a number. I can't say 100, 200, 300, 400, but any additional advantage we can provide to the officers in the field, and most of it's technology that we need to have. Because, I mean, our city's gotten larger, our police force has gotten smaller, and without using other technology to help, like I said, there's with 87 cameras in the city right now, the LPRs, that's 87 sets of eyes that don't go to sleep, that don't go to work, they don't take time off, they don't have to pay them overtime. It's a one fixed cost. They're doing their job 24/7 for us, and all they're doing is helping us know where the people committing bad acts are, or helping us locate people that are, that leave with me. You see the silver alerts, like, wow, we're old people or people with mental cognitive issues that drive away in their car, and people are trying to find them. We see them all the time from the state, the silver alerts where people with dementia are out and about. Those cars are entered into this system. So if it hits and they're a Seattle person that came across and they were driving through the city of Yakima, we'll see that come up in our LPRs, and we'll go try to find that car so that person can be reunited and get the help they need. So, again, the easy question is, I don't know the number that would be, but the more we have, the better it is to be able to provide a better public safety for the community and the entire county.
Okay. Is there anything that would make you reconsider or scale back this technology in the future?
I don't believe so. I think that we need to keep expanding and looking for new types of technology that can help us do our job. Law enforcement's ever changing, and if we ever get to a point where we stop looking for advantages that we can take and lawfully use, I mean, there's legislation that's going to impact how these are used, probably statewide. There's a couple different bills that are going through, and discussions on what those are going to look like, whether it's public records requests, et cetera. But I think that we need to, as law enforcement, not become stagnant and not say this is, DNA. DNA was a big issue years ago. Now I think it's become accepted to the point where I think that a lot of juries believe we should have DNA in every case, and the expectation, watch TV shows and they solve a crime in an hour because they get the DNA and it comes back immediately, and they've got all the videos, and we don't have the cool boards that they have on, CSI where we just move around with our hands. That's not real. But I think that juries expect to see that evidence. That becomes the natural. Why is there not a video of this person? Why is there not DNA on this case? So I think that Dustin hit on it earlier. We need to provide the best. The prosecutor's office is shorthanded. We need to provide the best case we can to them to be able to prove that. Because if we provide them a case that's not substandard, the likelihood of that person being held accountable goes down. And then again, the victim has the person who perpetrated them running around the community free. So that's ultimately, it's all part of a big system. And I talked about it earlier, but I don't think that I think we need to be continually looking at what more technology can help us do our job rather than less.
Yeah, I would just add that I think it depends. I would agree with Chief Boyle. We need to use every advantage we can to keep our community safe. However, there may come a time when the cost outweighs the benefit. And if the community gets to a point where they don't feel like it's worth funding this anymore, or they don't feel like it's worth investing in the technology anymore, I could see that there could come a time when we stop investing in this, or we stop focusing so much on this type of technology. I think that's possible. I would hope that as we get further on, down the road, as far as all these different tech companies coming up and with really good ideas for law enforcement to solve crime, that hopefully the more people get it, the cheaper it gets, or it stays relatively inexpensive, because the government can't continue to afford these things if it gets to a point where it's too expensive, it's too costly. I think the community would be like, okay, can we really do this anymore? Are we really going to be able to not hire police officers anymore because technology's come to a place. I don't really think so. The human element involved in building relationships and investigating crime will always be there. And I think that is so important that we stay focused on that, because a piece of technology can't identify, feelings or how someone's reacting to something specific. At least not yet, they can't, that I'm aware of. But a human can. A police officer who has been trained well, who can go out and look at how a person is dealing with a particular sensitive issue, is incredibly important. And that's what I think really drives, how many officers we really need. I know that every law enforcement agency wishes we had another 100 bodies, right? But bodies are really expensive. Police officers are really expensive. And so we kind of have to we have to really do some budgeting, some future budgeting, and looking at like, okay, where are we going to be at with this? If technology is going to keep helping us solve crime, but we need to make sure that we keep investing in people, good, well-trained people that can do the job. But at some point that may crash. So I guess the answer to your question from my perspective is I agree with Chief Boyle, but there may come a time when the cost is, we just can't afford it anymore. I hope that doesn't happen, because I think it's so valuable to keep our community safe, but that's possible.
You just kind of brought up a question in my own head. I was thinking so city council is the one that approves these issues, if that's correct, for like adding more cameras.
Council policy will dictate on what we do, and obviously they control budgeting for the city, so it's
okay. Do you think like adding more cameras should be a vote of the people, like the community, or do you think it should just be decided by the council?
That's a policy decision for the council. Like, that's their decision on how they move forward with things.
Gotcha.
Okay, I'll give my perspective on that.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting question. The people who set policy for our cities, they choose people like Chief Boyle and myself to lead the department. And they expect that we're going to provide the best information that we can to them on how we believe we can solve crime. The public doesn't understand, unfortunately, all the things that, like, you're giving us time right now to explain our perspective on a piece of technology, license plate reader technology that we use. But not everybody's going to watch your video. And not everybody's going to put in the effort to really dive into it and see what the technology can actually do. Well, we have. And we use it every day. And so I would hope that the community would trust us enough as leaders and executive leaders in law enforcement to make those decisions that are best for the community. Now, if they tell me that they don't trust me anymore, then so be it. That's fine. I understand that. But I would hope that that this wouldn't be a public vote thing, because they haven't invested the time and the effort to understand really what the technology can do. I would hope that that's why they have elected people that choose people like Chief Boyle and myself to make those decisions. And anytime you get a bunch of people involved in a discussion, and if they're not all educated the same, then there becomes like some clashes in that, right? And unless everybody's willing to listen and willing to come in with an open mind and see how it can be of benefit. And so that's why I'm willing to have this discussion with you, because I think that's very valuable on what things we can do. So I think that Chief Boyle's right. That is a policy decision based off of what the councils elect to do. But ultimately, I hope that the community expects and trusts us enough as leaders in law enforcement to make those decisions to make sure that we're keeping our community safe.
Okay, great. And I just have one more question and I'm done. Do you believe that the increased surveillance is the primary solution to public safety, or do you think there's other approaches that could be more effective?
Well, I think that the use of technology, and I don't know the word surveillance I call it surveillance, but I think the use of technology is valuable. But again, being able to fully fund the criminal justice system has to be the priority, because we can't, like I said, the technology, number one, we're not watching this all the time, but we get the evidence, we point it together, but it takes an officer or a detective to put that case together, and then it takes a prosecutor to prosecute it. It takes, public defenders to defend it. If they don't have money for their own attorney, then we have to have incarceration rates. So I think that the answer is educating yourself, fully funding law enforcement, as a whole, not just as an individual piece of it. And again, like to touch off what Dustin said, trusting that we're going to bring back to them the best information we can. And, and I think we're evaluating this. We're not just jumping in and buying everything just hit on the real-time crime center. There's a lot of components of that. And we didn't this is going to be an ongoing process. We're evaluating, did the cameras work? Did the ALPR, I think we've shown the ALPRs work. Do the cameras provide enough of an addition to the system to make the investment in it long term? And I think as we continue to go through the process of learning this, is we as a community just have to decide how much we want to invest in law enforcement or public safety in general. And that includes the entire system. And long term, I don't know, is technology that it's not the ultimate answer, but investing in good people, good trained people, continuing education, training, providing good equipment to the officers in the field, providing them the ability to do their jobs, working with the state, local and state government to provide laws that protect the citizens against their fear of being imposed upon, but also allows us to do our jobs.
Yeah, this is the age-old question. What can we do to keep our communities safe? I agree with Chief Boyle. One of the things that I would add to what he said was that ideally, in a perfect world, everybody would be willing to share information with us so that we could have really good witnesses that can help us solve crime. Okay. In Yakima County, that doesn't always happen. Whether there is a lack of trust, or people are just going about their lives, or they're not in the right place at the right time to help be a really good witness, then that limits our ability to really solve crime if people aren't willing to come forward and share information with us, right? If your loved one had been, brutally murdered, then you're going to be willing to tell us information. But what about the people that were there at the time? That's not how it always works. And so because of that, if we want to help support your family and bring justice to your family and really help you feel like we did an adequate job in the way we do business, then we have to use technology, because people aren't coming forward and they're not telling us all of the information that we need to know to be able to solve that crime. And I guess that for me is what's one of the hardest things. I wish there was just like a silver bullet that we could, have that just immediately make people feel comfortable with us, or maybe not a silver bullet, maybe the grand idea, whatever that is. I don't know that we have that yet. But what we have seen in trends in law enforcement across the United States and across the world really is technology. Technology helps solve crime. And if that makes people feel safer, then we want to invest in it. If that's going to help us solve crime, then we want to invest in it. I think that if you were able to somehow do a poll, and for every person, not just a few people, but for every person in Yakima County, I think that it would say that they're okay with the way that we're using technology right now. There are a few people, there is a small minority of people that feel like we are maybe imposing on their rights. Okay. The law says we're not imposing on their rights. We're in a place where it's in plain view doctrine, like I mentioned before, where there's no expectation of privacy. And ultimately, everybody else feels like, oh, well, they're just doing their job. They're doing the part that's most important and keeping me safe, because if something happens to me, I want them to have access to that camera so they can help find me, or help find my daughter that walked away, or help solve the crime that was involved with my loved one. I think that's what's really important. And if that requires us to use technology, then we're going to do it every day.
All right. Well, I think that is it for me, unless you guys have anything else you want to add to the...
No, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to kind of hopefully provide some information to the community, the people that watch us get an understanding of where we're at. And, if you ever have questions, feel free to contact the Yakima Police Department, contact the Union Gap Police Department. We'll be happy to share the information that we have. And like I said, again, thanks for the opportunity to come out and kind of I think there's a lot of misinformation gets put out. And this is an opportunity for us to kind of share with you and your viewers what we're doing with it, hopefully answer some of their questions and make them feel more comfortable with that we're using the technology in the right way, and trust that we're trying to do the best we can for our community and make it safe. And that's what ultimately I think everybody's goal in this room. I think no matter who lives, everybody in our community wants to live in a place that's safe so they can feel safe to live, work, and visit. And we're trying to do the best we can with what staffing levels we have, what technology we have, and make the case so that people want to come to Yakima. They want to invest in our community. They want to stay here. They want to feel comfortable when they go for a walk that they can go and enjoy the parks that we have and all the great outdoor things that are here. And misinformation gets sent out, then I think it becomes, detrimental to what we're trying to do as law enforcement and other city leaders.
And the way we improve public safety, the way we improve quality of life in Yakima County is by investing into our future. And that requires businesses that want to come reside here and hire people and give people the opportunity to live their lives and enjoy their lives and spend money, and all those things. And if we can't provide a safe place to do that, then it's really hard to bring businesses here to the Yakima Valley that want to invest and really show the public, that they want to stay. And so we're willing to do whatever we can to make that happen. And I hope that the community understands that they feel like we are genuinely trying to help solve crime and make them feel safer, that they're in a space that they can live their lives and have a better quality of life. That's what we all want. That's the American dream. So we just want to help provide that.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to talk to me. I appreciate all the hard work you guys do all the time. I see you out there in the field doing all types of stuff, Well, that's it for me. So
Thank you.
all right, have a good day.
All right.